Much for coming to our July community webinar. Our topic today is AI and RecOps, and we have Martyn Redstone here to talk to us about it. Just a few housekeeping items. We will be paying attention to the questions, so feel free to drop any questions in the chat, anything like that. We will also be sending out some materials after this call. As a reminder, we have our next community webinar around skill-based hiring with Matthias and Andrea on August 22nd. So I will be sending that information out as well. But without further ado, I'm just going to quickly share my screen, do a little bit of an intro here, because that's the exciting part. So if I can get my computer to want to work with me. Okay, I'm just going to do it like this. So we've already done the intro. So basically, biggest things that you're going to get out of this webinar right now today is, experience first RecOps, using AI in RecOps, and operationalizing AI for RecOps. That's kind of really some of the most exciting pieces about this, why we're excited to have Martyn here. And getting into Martyn, introduction. So Martyn, do you want me to do this? Do you want to do this? Up to you.
Well, I was gonna say it'd be a good test to see if you can memorize all of our conversations we have, but I'm happy to do it if you want me to.
Up to you. But yes, no, I have memorized our conversations in the past.
No, it's fine. Look, it's not too detailed. Ultimately, the numbers are here on the screen. I've been in the technology world for the last 25 years, but for the last 18 years, that's been focused on recruitment. But for the last 7 years, I've been running my own AI automation agency for recruiters and HR professionals. So I work with HR departments, HR teams, recruitment, TA, staffing businesses and internal TA to help them upskill, educate them in AI, help them strategize for AI, and then implement AI. So simple as that. Specialize in conversational AI, so chatbots, voice bots, those kind of things. But for the last 18 months, it's very much been conversational AI and generative AI when everybody's going a little bit crazy about that side of things.
Definitely. Well, we're looking forward to hearing more about kind of what are the differences. I mean, even if we're a technical audience, we know that there's what people are even calling AI. Its definition is now changing as well. So I'm going to pass it over to you to share your screen and show us what you've got cooking there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I must apologize in advance. Obviously, you can hear by my accent that I am British. I'm here in the UK. It is actually hot today. It's kind of in double digits Celsius, which is hot for here. And that means that some of the spellings might not be correct for the American audience. So let me share my screen. There.
Well, as we like to say too, you are not the villain as most American television and movies might have us believe that all villains have British accents.
No, absolutely not. Not the villain. Not even the romantic fop that kind of Hugh Grant tends to portray as well. Just a bit of a nerd around AI. And you're quite right, Jeremy. Just pick up on a point that you made, which is that. There's lots of different versions of AI, and I'm not going to go into the technicalities of that on today's webinar. But I use the term AI very interchangeably. Ultimately, AI is a stack of technologies, and generative AI is the one that everyone talks about nowadays. It kind of AI didn't exist before November 2022 when ChatGPT came out. It's that kind of thought process. But we're going to talk about AI generically today. So I wanted to jump in, and obviously I've got a very educated audience today all about RecOps, and RecOps is a very, very passionate area of mine as well, because it's the bit that's important when it comes to technology. But I just wanted to remind us, what RecOps is, and so when I kind of look at the responsibilities of RecOps, it's process optimization, data analytics, technology integration, candidate experience, and stakeholder collaboration. Those are the kind of 5 areas that I think RecOps is responsible for and works towards improving and enhancing. But where I come from is very much an experience-based thought process when it comes to RecOps. So I put experience right in the middle. So in this instance, based on that list of 5 that I just showed you, candidate experience front and center in the middle. And when we improve processes, when we optimize processes, when we look at data, when we collaborate better with stakeholders, and when we integrate technology more efficiently, we're always going to be improving the candidate experience. And actually, the same can be said for hiring manager experience and recruiter experience as well. So when I think about utilizing technology, utilizing AI, utilizing automation throughout RecOps, I always think about it from an experience first mindset. So how are we going to improve the experience? Let's look at the issue. Let's look at an experience-based problem, and then let's work backwards. And does it mean that we have to change something in the process? Do we have to look at data slightly differently? Do we have to bring in different stakeholders, or do we have to look at different technology? So just wanted to think to put that out there front and center. So the way that I think about RecOps is very much experience first. So let's look at, like I said, the challenge with an experience. When we improve one experience, whether it be candidate, hiring manager, or recruiter, we tend to improve everybody's experience anyway. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. Now, the reason is we need to start thinking about what are the elements of a good experience. Now, this is all going to come together when we think about technology and AI and automation. So for me, a good experience is absolutely made up of 3 pillars: immediacy, convenience, and agency. So immediacy, we don't want a delay in the process. Convenience, we want to be able to take part in a process when and where we want to. An agency, we want to manage that process ourselves, to think about kind of self-service and those kind of things. So let's put that into context. Let's think about going shopping. So we go into a store, or we're walking along at lunchtime, we think about buying our lunch from a store somewhere, and we look into the window of one store and we see the queues at a manned checkout in a store, and that's the only checkout there is, and you have to queue up. And in this picture here, you can see all these people getting very frustrated at the older lady kind of counting out her pennies at the front while she's paying. She's probably had a 5-10 minute conversation with the gentleman who's manning that checkout till as well. And then we walk past another window and we see a long line of self-service checkout tills where we can queue up, we can get through really quickly. We're only going for lunch. We're not thinking about buying a whole week's worth of groceries. We're just going, for a quick lunch. Which one are we going to choose? Well, obviously, it's going to be the self-checkout. And don't lie to me. Don't anyone lie to me and tell me you're going to choose the other one. You're going to choose the self-checkout. And that's because it's convenient. It's there. It's ready for you. It's immediate. You're not going to have to queue for hours and hours. And also, you've got agency. You can do it yourself. You don't have to wait for somebody to fumble around and look at what you're buying and talk to you about what you're buying. So that's shopping, though. That's, that's a $10 lunch. What if it's something a little bit more high priced? When we start thinking about jobs, we start thinking about value as well. It's a little bit more high value than a $10 lunch. So let's think about the last time you booked a holiday. When you last booked a holiday, when you last booked a vacation, did you speak to a human travel agent? Did you go into a store? Did you sit down? Did you go through everything? Or I don't know, sorry, my doorbell's going. Talking about technology and automation. So turn that on. So did you go into a store? Did you go into did you go into a travel agent? Did you chat to somebody? Or did you just go onto a website? Do the research yourself. Look at all the ratings, find the best flight and book it all online. And again, don't lie to me. You didn't go into a travel agent. I was recently I was speaking on a panel at a recruitment event here in the UK. And I asked all of the audience to stand up. And this is an audience full of recruitment professionals, TA professionals. I also asked the audience to stand up if they booked a vacation in the last couple of years. Almost everybody stood up. I said, remain standing if you booked that vacation through a human travel agent. And every single person sat down. So again, we're highlighting here, people go onto travel websites because of convenience. They can go onto it whenever they want, wherever they want. Immediacy, they don't have to wait around, queue up in a store, wait for the next operator to be available. And agency, they can do it themselves. They get their choice of hotel, their choice of flights. They get to do the research. So again, we're looking at how experience has changed with changing consumer behaviors. You know, consumers now, they want these three things in the experiences they have with businesses and organizations around them. And that also includes recruiting businesses. That also includes the hiring process. They want immediacy, they want convenience, and they want agency. Immediacy, they don't want to delay in the process. They don't want to be ghosted. They don't want to wait days, weeks, and months for a response to their application or an outcome from an interview. Convenience, they want to be able to apply for the role and talk to somebody wherever and whenever they want. They're mostly not going to be available 9 to 5 because they might be working elsewhere. So they may want a conversation with somebody outside of those hours. An agency, you know, they want to manage that process themselves. They want self-service portals. They want to see where they're up to in the process. They want to see outcomes. And so you want to give them a little bit more power in the process. Okay, so let's whiz back through here. Okay, so now let's have a think about, now that we've got our mindset around experience and what makes a good experience, let's think about how we can start building AI into RecOps so that we can provide an exceptional experience to our candidates, our hiring managers, and our recruiters. Okay, so let's start thinking about those 5 areas. Those 5 areas that we talked about earlier: process optimization, data analytics, technology integration, candidate experience, and stakeholder collaboration. Should actually just change candidate experience just for experience now, based on the conversation we've just been having. So very, very quickly, as we whiz through these, process optimization. There is so much that you can do when it comes to process optimization. I'm sure you will know it anyway. But ultimately, you need to look at where those bottlenecks are within the process and suggest improvements. You can even use AI to help you find that. So one of the interesting areas of AI, and we talk about AI now from a Gen AI perspective and from a large language model like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, is that you can turn AI into a consultant. You can ask AI to take on the persona. Hey, you're an expert when it comes to recruitment operations. You're an expert when it comes to talent acquisition process improvement. I'd like to talk to you about my process, and I'd like you to suggest some areas where you can identify some bottlenecks and suggest some improvements from there. We can also think about using predictive analytics to forecast hiring needs. There's a great piece of software called Foresight that actually does this for you. So it turns your recruitment team into something very reactive. Hey, we need somebody yesterday, to something proactive where it analyzes your workforce and forecasts your hiring needs for the next 12, 24, 36 months. So you can start pipelining for those roles before the hiring manager even submits the requisition. That kind of flows straight into data analytics. So AI can obviously ingest a vast amount of data and provide some really, really interesting analytics which are actionable. And again, you can use something like ChatGPT to do this. ChatGPT is a fantastic data analysis. So you can actually ask, you can send data in, spreadsheet, what have you, make sure it's anonymized. You know, got to think about data protection, and you can ask ChatGPT to do that analysis for you. Or again, you know, you've got lots of other data analysis there, and it's very effective. Whether it be about sources of talent, whether it be about improving different areas that you invest in from a recruitment marketing perspective, etc., etc. I'm going to kind of skip all the way to the end because technology integration is kind of central to everything. That's why it's right in the middle. So stakeholder collaboration. We know that even your stakeholders want immediacy, convenience, and agency. Not just the candidates, hiring managers and recruiters. They all want that speed in process. They don't want delays between stages. And actually, AI can help you facilitate that communication and coordination between all of those 3 people, whether it be scheduling interviews, whether it be sending out text messages to give people updates on the situation. You can automate all of that, and you can use AI to provide that real-time feedback and update on statuses. You can get candidate feedback rapidly. You can now have interview platforms that bring that all together in one as well. And obviously the experience is second only to the technology integration here. I mean, it's the primary objective we're trying to do. And you can think about all the different ways that you can improve the experience. I put a couple of examples up here, such as, chatbots, not only to help people speed up the screening process, but to keep them informed as well via chat-based tools like SMS, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, etc., etc. And then self-service options as well through those processes. We're used to now having conversations with machines through things like ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini. So people are very much used to now having a conversation with the machine via a chatbot. It has to be well designed and it has to be plugged into the right data. And that's when we get to the technology integration. So whatever you're doing here, whether it be process optimization, stakeholder collaboration, you need to make sure that the technology you're using is integrated across multiple systems. And something like a co-pilot, which is the word of 2023 for me, and very much coming into 2024 as well. The whole point of a co-pilot isn't just to have another version of ChatGPT sitting there working with you. It's to plug into multiple data points and be able to give you not only actionable insights, but also be able to go away and perform actions on that data or perform actions in those systems as well. So whether it be answering FAQs, or how best do I create a more diverse talent pipeline, or whether it be to act as that expert consultant who can give you analysis on the data, suggest next steps, or even go away and update something in a CRM or an ATS. You have to make sure that you're not doing these pieces in silo and that your technology is integrated across your tech stack. Okay. So let's just go into some of those kind of areas. I mentioned about lots of different tools. One of the most important things, and this is kind of across process automation and technology integration, is an automation tool or a tool that brings everything together. So I talk about AI and automation, and that's kind of how I, as you saw and heard earlier, how I introduced myself. I'm an AI and automation consultant, because one, in my opinion, doesn't go without the other. You can't have a good AI strategy in place without automating processes and integrating them all together. So we've got tools like Zapier, like Workato, Make, and IFTTT that do that, and that do that really well. They're called trigger-based automation tools. And in fact, IFTTT actually stands for if this, then that, which is the standard trigger that happens across automation. If this happens, then do this. But the lovely thing about these platforms is that not only do they allow you to automate processes, but they allow you to automate processes across multiple tools. So if candidate fills in application form, send them a text message inviting them to a chatbot conversation. When they complete the chatbot conversation, import that into your ATS. When they schedule an interview with the hiring manager, send the hiring manager an email with an update on the chatbot conversation. So you can see all of these things that start, stringing together both AI tools and automating the technology integration in between them. Okay, data analytics. So, when it comes to data analytics, again, it's about integrating technology. So data is great from a silo perspective, and you can have talent analytics from somewhere like LinkedIn or Talent Neuron or Horsefly or any of those platforms, and you can have your ATS sitting there, and you can have your H.A.I.R tool. In this case, I put Hi Bob there, but it could be any of them. The whole point is that you need context when it comes to data, and sometimes data is great when it comes to a siloed tool like LinkedIn, but actually, what does it mean? So you've uncovered a great source of hiring through LinkedIn Talent Insights, but what does it mean? How do we get that into an ATS? How do we get that into an HRIS? How do we use the data from that an HRIS to suggest that we've got a new project that's spinning up, or we've got somebody that's leaving in 3 months' time? How do we then integrate that from a data analytics perspective? Say, okay, well, we now know we've got somebody leaving. Let's go into LinkedIn Talent Insights. Let's bring that data in. let's also then build that requisition in the ATS, and having that on a lovely dashboard from a data analytics perspective. And I'm going to kind of keep hammering home, it's about technology integration, and there's no point having siloed data. It's all about context, using AI to analyze all that data from 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 different data points, and bringing that all into a dashboard is a really, really powerful use case of data analytics. But it's not just about demonstrating and displaying that data, it's about the so what. And that's the great thing that a large language model can do, because it's very, very good at building that narrative around that data and allowing you to present that data in a way that your stakeholders can understand, and a way that can drive action as well. Okay. And finally, candidate experience. I love this slide. It's always my favorite one. Oh, look, I get to register an account to apply for this job. Yippee. This is just proof in our industry just how terrible our candidate experience is, when there are certain platforms out there that I won't mention, that when you want to apply for a job, you have to register an account first. And so we need to start thinking about how we improve the candidate experience. What can we do to bring in that convenience, that immediacy, and that agency? And whether it be stripping out a registration form, or whether it be bringing in a chatbot at the application stage to screen people immediately to know whether or not they even stand a chance at moving forward in the process, rather than waiting around. And I've hammered home enough about the candidate experience, so I won't bother talking about it anymore. But it's central to everything we do in RecOps. Okay, now this is the fun bit. Everybody says that's great. We've learned all about AI. We understand the difference between a large language model, a small language model. We understand the difference between machine learning and neural networks and all these kind of lovely things that we're all quite techy in this kind of group. But how do we operationalize it? How do we actually make it real? How do we bring it into the organization? And so I have a framework that's quite straightforward. It's crawl, walk, and run. Because ultimately, you can't run before you can walk, and you can't walk before you can crawl. So for me, the first thing we do is find an opportunity to crawl when it comes to AI in the organization. So what do I mean by crawl? Well, the initial stage of AI implementation is crawling. We want to focus on very small scale projects or pilots that are very low complexity, very low risk, but can provide some really, really quick wins and some really easy success that we can prove the value to the organization. Once we've crawled, and we've successfully crawled, and we've proved to the organization that AI is worth investing in into TA, that's when we start thinking about how do we then start walking with AI. We kind of have this as the medium stage, what we call the development stage of AI implementation. So we're going from small scale, low risk, low complexity pilots or proof of concepts into something that's a little bit more integrated, a little bit more complex, something that goes across maybe one department, one vertical. You might have within your TA team a split around geography or role type, or a split between experienced hire, graduate hire, those kind of things. So think about a use case that's across one team and actually helps improve that team's processes by integrating it into what they're already doing. So it's a little bit more complex. It's a moderate kind of level of complex, but you do have strategies in place to ensure that those moderate risks are reduced as well. And those risks could be experience, they could be data, they could be any of those kind of situations. So that's also a really important thing from a RecOps perspective, is to ensure that you're risk assessing and mitigating as and when required. But the wins are quite noticeable. They're very strategic. You've shown that you can enhance and adapt a very, very specific process into something that's quite a bit more complex than just running a proof of concept. You'll have noticeable improvements in efficiency and output, and you'll have recruiters that absolutely love it because it's making their lives a lot easier. It's making hiring managers happier because recruitment's happening more efficiently, and it's making candidates happier because they're getting a better experience as well. And the success that we tend to see on walk projects is very iterative. So it's about building and building and building and seeing those successes coming one after the other. We never see a big bang, because big bang implementation of AI is dangerous, because if one thing goes wrong, it all goes wrong. And that's why we say iteratively choose your walk projects, and move through them one at a time. And then we've finally got the run projects. These are the ones where we're gonna have an advanced stage of AI implementation. It's wide scale. I'd say across the entire organization, but I mean TA organization here. So it's wide scale. So you're doing everything you can to turn your TA organization into an AI first organization. It's very high. It's very complex. It could take a long time to go from start to finish in these projects, because it can be quite sophisticated from a solution and integration perspective. The risks are obviously higher because it's large scale transformation, but again, you need to mitigate those risks, and create a lot of contingency planning around them. But the wins are transformative. It literally changes the whole scope of the organization. We're talking about future here. We're not talking about something that's going to happen next week. But the successes, if it's done right, they're very long term and they're very sustainable. You are truly transforming your TA organization into an AI first organization, which means that you're more proactive. You're almost looking into the future and hiring before you know that the organization needs to hire, and all those kind of wonderful futuristic things. Okay, so I've talked about kind of risk mitigation, those kind of things. Look, governance is super important, and as the bastions of transformation within TA, having a true kind of governance structure is really, really important as well. I have my 3 pillars of governance that I work with my clients with. The first one, legal and ethical. We need to make sure there's adherence to legislation. We've got legislation coming out all over the world. Over here in Europe, we've got the EU AI Act, which is super important for any organisation who's interacting with candidates in the EU as well. It's not just people that are based here; it's about organisations that are interacting. It's much like the GDPR in that sense as well. And that's actually coming into life on August the 1st. So it goes live on August the 1st, and there's a countdown of certain dates and stages that we need to work towards after that. But you need to ensure that you're adhering to any legislation, whether it's local, national, or international. You need to ensure that the use of AI is responsible and relevant. And when I mean responsible, I mean you're using it responsibly in your processes. You're not just having it there for the sake of it. And that's the point of thinking about why you're using AI, to improve that experience and working backwards. So you make sure it's responsible and relevant. You're not just doing it for shiny object syndrome, as I call it. You need to make sure that all of your policies and processes are up to date when it comes to technology, AI, and everything else around it, and that they're reviewed regularly. And then you need to make sure that your teams are trained and upskilled when it comes to the use of the systems and the understanding of AI in general, and whether that includes legislation as well. And you could have teams within your organization that do that within L&D, or even an AI ops team that might be working there, or it could be down to you and TA leadership that are responsible for that. The second pillar is brand governance. We talk about brand governance because one of the things that people use AI for quite a lot nowadays in generative AI is creating communication, collateral, and other such things like social postings, job adverts, and what have you. And they could be using that for internal or external communication. So you need to make sure that that there's brand governance there, that you centralize brand control, you centralized any kind of prompt libraries, whether it be on an internal tool, a tool like Notion, or a tool like Poetry. You need to make sure things like colors, imagery are all kind of on brand for your organization, and that you've got control over the persona kind of side of things when it comes to text and voice channels. If you're using chatbots and voice bots, the actual dialogue is on brand as well. And finally, transparency, which is one of the most super important parts. You need to tell people how you're using their data. This is how we're using your data. This is how it's being processed. You need to make sure that you can explain AI, that your algorithms are explainable, and that comes down to, again, responsible AI, explainable AI. You need to understand how decisions might be being made. There's no defense around black box AI anymore, where it's just shrug your shoulders, say, well, the AI did it, not me. You need to be able to explain how the AI works and why it does what it does. you need to make sure you've got policy and guidelines on how your team uses AI. And more importantly, you need agreement and communication on the use of AI by candidates. What do I mean by agreement and communication? There's a lot of talk nowadays on whether candidates and applicants using AI to create their resumes, to create their cover letters, are cheating or not. I don't class it as cheating, just in the same way that I don't class us recruiters as using AI as cheating. But what we need to do is make sure that we have agreement on that across the team, across the organization, and that you're communicating out to your candidates on what you see as acceptable use of AI by them. And I've got a guideline that I can provide to Jeremy to send out afterwards on that as well. Okay, so just to finish off my session, a lot of people say, well, what do you recommend? And just as a pointer, I don't get any kickbacks for any of my recommendations. What do you recommend we do? Where do we start? What are the best tools that we can go for? So when it comes to collaboration on AI, I believe that poetry is a fantastic tool. From poetry, you can build your collateral, you can centralize your prompts, you can just control the use of generative AI from a collateral creation perspective across your TA organizations. I highly recommend poetry. There's a tool called Atlas Copilot, which is a fantastic copilot. It plugs into your data sources, your knowledge bases, and some external learning and development providers as well. And it can help coach you through your job. Like I said earlier, it could be as simple as, can you help me work out the best way to create a diverse pipeline for this role? And it will give you some strategies. It's better than ChatGPT insofar as it's actually designed for HR and recruitment in mind. So it's trained on tens of thousands of hours of content from video instructions, from training, etc. And the large language model is being fine-tuned on HR and recruitment use cases. So if you're looking for a copilot that's specific for your job, Atlas Copilot's the one. And from a candidate experience, there's a tool called SAM, which has recently been brought out by a company called TalkPush. TalkPush have been a recruitment automation and chatbot business that have been around since about 2015, 2016. They've just brought out their voice tool, which is SAM. It's talktosam.ai. And SAM actually performs telephone interviews at scale. So if you're looking to do telephone interviews, get feedback on those interviews, and also have those reports being sent to the candidates, say, here's how you fared, be able to send those reports to the hiring manager as well, then SAM's a great tool to use. And I'd highly recommend even just signing up for yourself on the website and playing with it, because you can do that as a bit of a freebie. I think you'll be very, very impressed. So this is my kind of 3 tools of the hour right now that I suggest you go and take a look at if you want to start using AI to improve the way that you do things in RecOps. And that is the kind of boring death by PowerPoint part of the session over with. You'll be pleased to hear. You can hit up that QR code to connect with me on LinkedIn, join my newly launched, literally today, community. Jeremy knows my newsletter, which is H.A.I.R, which is ironic because I don't have any, but it stands for AI and H.A.I.R. I'm now setting up a H.A.I.R community. So if you want to come and talk about all things AI, please do come along. Literally launched today. So there we have it. And I think the next thing, Jeremy, is back over to you.
Yeah. And before we sort of jump into that, I did want to go back to kind of an interesting thing that you brought up with experience, because I think that it's really kind of a fun thing to talk about here, which is, you have that example of the supermarket where, do you go to the automated machines where you can do it yourself, or do you go to the manned checkout counter? And I think one of the things that comes up, and we didn't necessarily touch on it too much here, but it is a conversation, is the privacy aspect, or is it the perception of privacy? Because you now have AI, whereas if you're giving information to a human, they might forget. AI is not going to forget. It's going to sit there over the top and remember everything. So when you're talking with people and you get candidates who maybe have applied to multiple jobs, have had multiple interviews, how do you sort of help the candidate not necessarily run into issues where it becomes, you know, hey, I said this one time, but now I've gotten more experience than that, and the AI is bringing what I said back, and it's not exactly relevant.
It's a really, really great point. It comes with context ultimately, and that's the wonderful thing about AI is that you can build context into it. So as an example, you know, you might have interviewed somebody 3 years ago for a role, and they haven't been right for that role because they haven't had the right experience or they haven't had the right training, qualifications, what have you. When you have the same role come up 3 years later, and the first thing that I hope recruiters do is go to their ATS and do a search for candidates to reach out to, you're not going to find that candidate because the data is 3 years old. So the benefit of using AI is actually the fact that you can go back to the agency piece of the experience. If you allow candidates to keep their profiles up to date rather than their profile in your ATS being based on a static point of time 3 years ago, then you're going to have the right data, the most up-to-date data to make the right decisions that are going to bring the right people in. And so that's kind of the best example I can give on making sure that, first of all, privacy is important, but I think that being able to give people agency with their data is even more important, whether they want to keep it up to date or whether they just don't want you to have it anymore. And that's actually one of the key regulations within GDPR is that you give people the right to privacy, the right to deletion of their data. And so, giving people, giving people agency over their own data is a benefit to no end.
Definitely. Well, all right. Getting into a couple of questions because I know we're coming up on time here. The first question is, where do you see RecOps in 1 year and in 5 years, and what AI skills do you think we need to have in order to be, forward-looking and building our own careers?
Yeah, great question. Where do I see RecOps in 1 year? I don't really see much of a difference in 1 year. I think 1 year goes quite quickly, as we've kind of seen over the previous few years. I don't think we'll see much of a difference. I think what we'll see is that in 1 year, RecOps is starting to think about the next 5 years. And I think that's the most important bit, is being able to say, well, in 5 years' time, in 1 year time, I've got a 5-year strategy in place. And in 5 years' time, I see RecOps as being a really, really interesting place, because I talk about, the kind of the crawl, walk and run situation. In 5 years' time, I'd expect to see people starting on their journeys of the run projects. What that actually means is that we get into something called an agentic situation where you've got AI agents that are performing tasks. And tasks is the most important thing to think about here, is that, and people say, oh yeah, AI is going to take over my job. AI isn't very good at doing a job, it's very good at doing a task. So it's about extracting the robotic tasks that recruiters do and giving them to AI agents. So in 5 years' time, I see RecOps as not only, I actually was going to do this in my presentation and kind of called it RecAI Ops, but it kind of looked really weird on the screen. So we'll scrap that, it's a terrible name. But where I see RecOps in 5 years' time is actually being managing not only people, but managing AI agents as well. So I think that's kind of the most important thing to think about in 5 years, is that you're going to be managing a team, if not an army, of AI agents that are doing tasks on a per second basis. Happy to go on to the next one. Yep. AI skills that I think you'll need. So look, I don't think that people in TA need AI skills per se. I think they need to be good at prompting, and prompting is how to have a conversation with the machine, ultimately. And obviously now's not the time to go through kind of how to prompt and how to make a good prompt and have you. So I think there's two skills that RecOps need in the future. The first one is prompting, because everything that you'll do when you interact with technology is going to be based on a natural language prompt, whether that's spoken or whether that's typed. The second skill, and I talk about it from a technology integration perspective, you need to be comfortable and confident in working with APIs. I think that's a really super important skill, technology skill to have. If you look at the future of AI, it's how to string those all together, and APIs are the key to that.
And when you say, I mean, first things first, I mean, look, coming up with a name is hard. We can't all hit it out of the park with H.A.I.R as a community name right off the bat. But the second part is when you say that prompt, that API connection piece, are you talking about from a deep technical level being able to do the coding for the API piece, or are you talking about like, hey, I know that this API connects to this API and I just have to, sign in with the account and make sure that that thing flows through our entire system?
I think there's levels. I think the first level is having an understanding of what an API is and what it does and why you use it and where you use it. And I think the next level is being able to design from an API mindset. So then being able to structure your technology integration, understanding that API is capable of this and that API is capable of that, etc. And then the final level is absolutely being able to code, to do it yourself. Obviously, there's the no-code things that I showed earlier, like Zapier and Make and those kind of things that make it easier. But I don't think that people in RecOps need to go as deep as being the developers. I think we've got internal people most of the time that we can lean on. I think that's the thing that we have to remember, is that we're not in silo. It sometimes feels like we are within TA, but we should be able to lean on people in organizations. And most organizations are absolutely going down this route of AI integration. And so they've got teams that are set up and ready to go, or a person or a group of people, or even people externally that are helping them. Get involved in that conversation really, really quickly and start leaning on the resources that your organization should be able to provide to you.
Great. And then I think this is going to be our last question before time runs out, which is, what are 1 to 2 topics you don't see people discussing enough when it comes to AI and recruiting? And I realized there was a missing you there.
No, that's fine. It's a really interesting question. So when we talk about AI in recruiting, for the last 18, 19, 20 months, we've been talking about generative AI. And I think that the issue here is that most people think about generative AI from a text perspective, and they think about AI as let's generate a job description, let's transcribe an interview, those kind of things. And AI can do so much more. And I think it's what people are talking about rather than what they're not talking about. They're only talking about generative AI. And we need to think about all of the other things that AI can do. And I mentioned some things in here, but we've got optimization AI, we've got vision AI, we've got natural language processing. We've got so much going on in the world of AI that can help from a recruitment TA perspective. So actually, it's about thinking to yourself, AI is not just about writing a good job description. Remove yourself from that mindset and start thinking about how AI can help across the board with different types of things. And I run a 3-hour, half-day workshop for TA teams, and part of it is how we can build use cases around AI that isn't just about building a job description.
Great. Well, Martyn, thank you so much again for your time today. Everybody, thank you so much for giving us your time as well. As a quick reminder, remember to connect with Martyn on LinkedIn. Puts out some very, very, very fantastic content. Obviously, just launched his newsletter community, so that'll be a fun one to kind of follow along. And as well, remember that in a month on August 22nd, same bat time, same bat channel, we are going to be talking about skill-based hiring, how to implement it, how to talk about it. We know that is a very, very big ask for our community and for our people. And once again, if you do have any suggestions of webinars, people you want to hear talk about, or if you want to talk yourself, feel free to reach out to me or Shannon over Slack, and we will work with you to get everything done. So once again, thank you so much, everybody. Martyn, thank you so much again for giving us part of your early evening.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jeremy.